Calaroga Shark Media.
Do you like Conan O'Brien? Because if you do, you'll like today's show, and if you don't, you might as well leave now. I am Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. This is the Oscars preview. Your host for the 97th Annual Academy Awards, former late-night talk show host, current podcaster, Conan O'Brien. He joked at a press conference, I only hosted so I could be invited. Conan did a lot of press this week. Everything I'm about to tell you here is from many different sources. I'll mention the sources for the most part, but understand that I'm really bouncing around from interview to interview and trying to piece things together thematically as we head forward here. Conan was riffing. He said he was probably the greatest entertainer the producers have ever worked with. The producer said working with Conan has been a delightful experience. Conan said, well, we'll see what you're saying on Monday. The Oscars team, they're incredible professionals. They know what they're doing. They do beautiful work, and it's been a thrill for myself and for my head writer, Mike Sweeney, and also my lawyer as well. Conan said one of the things that has him the most excited is wearing a tuxedo. He said, it's the nicest thing I've ever put on in my life. It's made by High Society. Conan said it was important to use them because these are the people that make incredible wardrobe in Los Angeles. I didn't want to go with whatever designer. We wanted to do something that was from the community, and they made this incredible tuxedo. Another reason Conan accepted, incredible lighting. I said yes to this happily because I wanted to be part of this magical machine and have, for the first time in my life, incredible lighting. Because when I see people at a mall, all they say is, you look so good in person. What's wrong with you on television? And this is my chance, so let's get that lighting together. Conan got some advice from past hosts, including Billy Crystal and Kimmel. Conan said, I've spoken with Billy Crystal, who I think is the all-time great and mastered the hosting of the Oscars, in my opinion, and will always be top. Conan said Kimmel and his wife reached out to Conan and met him at a restaurant. Conan joked that Kimmel picked an expensive restaurant and ordered tons of appetizers that I don't eat. I don't eat shellfish. He ordered it and then stuck me with a bill, while wife Molly gave me all the pitches and the things I should know. Molly's the genius in that equation. They've been very supportive and very helpful. And so that's nice because I came up in a very different era of late night when not everybody was chummy and friendly and you didn't just pick up the phone. So this new era where people are so lovely to each other is something I don't take for granted. Interesting anecdote about Billy Crystal from the Times interview. Conan said Billy lost his house in the fire and I didn't want to bother him because I could only imagine. Then I saw him at the SNL 50 and we had a long talk, so I think I'm going to be texting him to say, hey, maybe here are some jokes, things like that. Then he talked about the dinner with the Kimmels. Conan said, things you wouldn't even think about. Like if you're doing a bit about somebody in Act 1, make sure they're in their seat, because sometimes 5 minutes into the monologue, they're still loading people in. Jimmy said, just make sure you sit down when you can in between acts, because you're standing the whole 3 hours and it does start to wear away at you. So I've had a pair of metal legs made that I'm going to paint a flesh color. Conan talked about Kimmel in a different piece and said his tips kept going back to try and sit down. If you can do the jokes sitting down, do them sitting down. What are you, Franklin Roosevelt? That's funny. Conan was on Kimmel's show, and Kimmel said, I wouldn't give you tips on jokes or any of that stuff. I'd never do anything like that. And asked Conan, do you have a tuxedo? Conan said, I have a tuxedo. I'm going to change outfits 15 times. How many tuxedos would you wear in a night? Kimmel said, well, what I would have is 2 jackets, and I would switch into the second jacket, and I always felt dumb about it. And Conan said, good to know. And he would tie a chair to your butt, right? More Conan. He spoke to Us Weekly and said, I've hosted many awards shows in my life, but the Oscars, it's the pinnacle. It's the one you dream about hosting when you're a child. As long as the pay is good, I'm looking into that. What can we expect? There'll be several moments in the Oscars where I'll be shirtless and oiled, and I think that's going to hurt the program incredibly. My biggest goal is to enjoy the 9 hours of the Oscar telecast. I think it would be a shame to get the chance to host the Oscars and not have a good time, so I'll be medicated. Conan said the biggest hosting lesson he's learned over the years is that mistakes aren't mistakes. I'm someone who hopes that things sometimes go a little off the rails because that's where the real memorable moments happen on late night and on the Oscars. Yeah, there was this thing a couple years ago. I don't know if you remember. Remember Will Smith slapped Chris Rock? Yeah, I think we're still talking about that one. Conan says he will address the current political climate during the awards, but he won't get bogged down in divisive jokes. I think as a host, I can't ignore the moment we're in, but I also have to remember it's threading a needle. I also have to remember what we're here to celebrate and infuse the show with positivity and also shine a light on all those people that have worked incredibly hard. Not just A-list celebrities, but people you never see, craftsmen and craftspeople that work hard and have spent years making the films. But I do it with humor, and then I also make sure the night doesn't drift into only about politics because I think that's robbing people of something. Beautiful hard work that they've done, so it's a difficult line to walk, but I'm determined to figure it out. We're told the show will have uplifting moments dedicated to LA after January's fires. As for his week putting this together, it's been a thrill. It's like for the first time getting to drive a Ferrari. My philosophy on this is, as the host, I'm the spokesperson in a way. I'm the person who's sitting in for anyone who's watching at home. If something happens that seems off or funny or strange, I should comment on it. Will Conan have a musical opening? His answer: I can neither confirm nor deny anything that's happening anywhere in the show, mostly because I don't know what's going on. I don't come to rehearsal. I hang out at Cheesecake Factory, which is on Vine Island. The whole trick here in this business to get people to watch is see what's going to happen. See, this is the mistake I used to make. I used to tell people exactly what I was going to do long before I did it, and no one tuned in. Then I learned, don't tell people what you're going to do. A magician taught me that. The New York Times profiled Conan. Conan had to evacuate his home during the fires. His wife called and asked what to save. His only thought was a 1980 letter from author E.B. White. Conan had written to him as a teenage fan. Conan said, and he wrote me back a really sweet letter. So I said, just grab that. If the rest goes, it goes. Conan is still living in a hotel. His preparation for hosting the Oscars has included bringing in 10 of his own writers, running jokes by the crew, and dropping into clubs in L.A. to try out the material. Now that I'm thinking, I'll tell you, I had reached out to Smigel's camp to see if I could get him on to talk about Night of Too Many Stars, and I got silence back, probably because Smigel's probably working with Conan on this, now that I think about it. That said, professionally, a non-response is just the worst thing. Hi, Night of Too Many Stars. Just write me back and say, like, the dude's busy, or we hate your show, or nobody listens to your show. We're not doing that. Non-responses aren't cool. If you work professionally in the industry, no is a perfectly good answer. Hey, do you want to host the Oscars? No. Hey, do you want to host the Oscars? Oh, I'll get back to you, or let me think about it. That's not good. It's same like with your friends. Do you want to hang out Saturday night? No. Just tell them no if you don't want to hang out. Just no is a fine answer. Anyway, hopefully I'll hear from the Smigel people. I'm just genuinely interested in the event and what goes into the event. And in the most positive way, you raise some money. Where does the money go? I don't mean that like I'm hosting 60 Minutes. I don't mean it like, where does the money go? I mean like, where does the money go? You guys seem like you're doing a good thing. I'd like to learn more about it. So Smigel Camp, someone get back to me. If you want to tell me nobody listens to the podcast, that's fine. I have digressed. Conan brought in 10 writers, one of them possibly, perhaps, maybe, who knows, Robert Smigel, to work on the jokes. They've been running jokes by the crew and dropping in at clubs in L.A. to try out material. They've been keeping that on the DL. I haven't heard a thing about that. That'll probably come out next week. Interesting that hasn't leaked at all. Conan said, I started seriously writing comedy around the time I was 18, and that's what I think about all the time. But he says there's no formula. It's frustrating, but it's not math. You can't prove it. The only way to find out is to try it on people. He also wouldn't tell the Times if he's doing a musical number or an opening montage. My guess, 100% yes. 100%. I have no doubt he will do something musical and goofy to open up. But Conan says nothing's in stone. I'm leaving every possibility on the table. I have choices right now. We'll see what happens. Conan got a little more serious with the Times. I said yes, because I'm nostalgic, particularly now about my childhood. The biggest thrill I've had in my career is meeting the celebrities that were on my TV when I was a little boy. So when I met Don Knotts, I lost my mind. When I met Tom Cruise, I was happy and he was lovely to me, but it couldn't have the same impact as Don Knotts. And I remember watching Johnny Carson host the Oscars and that being a big deal. The entertainment landscape has changed a lot. I told Billy Crystal, you hit a note that I don't think you can hit anymore, because when people tuned into his Oscars, everyone had seen the movies he was parodying. It's not the communal campfire that maybe it once was. But I still think the Oscars has meaning. Really good cinema, especially when it's from different countries, different points of view, has an incredible amount of resonance and importance right now, and this is the night that celebrates that. To be part of it is meaningful to me. I don't think of it as a thankless task, even if I just do it once and no one's interested in me doing it again. It'll have been a meaningful experience for me. My parents aren't here to see it. Yeah, they passed away last year, but I know it would have been a huge deal to them. I was able to tell my father, and he was impressed. He probably wondered, couldn't they find someone else? Conan told People, I have a really great photograph of my parents laughing in the audience at an event I did years ago, and I realized early on the original reason anybody gets into comedy is just trying to make our parents laugh. I used to think to myself sometimes, why would I continue doing comedy if my parents aren't here anymore? I'll still be thinking about them on Oscar night and trying to get them to laugh. That's kind of a comfort. It's also more pressure in case in the hereafter they don't like it and they let me know. When your parents go through all that effort to travel through space-time and the mists of mystery to tell you they didn't love it, that's a crushing blow. So I've really got to nail it. The topic of politics came up again. Conan said, it's all about threading the needle. I'm there really to talk about the films, to talk about the industry, and yeah, there's going to be political jokes here and there. There have to be. But if it's a screed, I'm doing a disservice to everybody. I'm actually doing a disservice to the people who might agree with the screed, in my opinion. However anyone voted should not be a prerequisite for whether you enjoy the show. I feel very strongly about that. What's Conan the most nervous about? Getting the tone right. The tone's been shifting a lot in LA, and people love to project their agenda on a big show. The thing I think the most about is how the ground can shift between when I'm talking to you. This is the New York Times, and this is by Milena Rizek, so not friend of the show, Jason Zinneman. Perhaps Milena could become a friend of the show. But Conan wants to get the tone right. The tone has been shifting a lot in LA. The thing I think about the most is how the ground can shift between when I'm talking to you and when the show happens. Moods can change. Currents can change. I want to make sure that I have my antenna up for everything, and I'm going to be doing that right up until they tap me on the shoulder to go out, so I just hope I'm able to ride it like a wave, because there's so much about it that I can't manifest now. It's just going to happen. It's what excites me and worries me, and that, in a nutshell, my life. I'm drawn to the things that scare me. They excite me and they scare me. I love them and I dread them, and it keeps flipping, and they haven't made a medication yet that will fix it. I think the surprise for America is people are going to look at this and say, that's one of the most attractive men alive. Some more odds and ends from Conan. I'm going to go to the audience and I'm going to shave Stanley Tucci's chest. He hasn't consented. He's heard about it. He said no, but I'm still going to do it. Conan said the Oscar audience can expect to see something new. I don't care if my ideas are bad ideas. I care that they're new and you haven't seen it before. You know what I mean? Wrestling a giant cobra, for the first time on stage hasn't been done. I can sing, I can dance, I can do close-up magic. I'm a contortionist. You don't know what I'm going to do. Anything can happen at any time. The Hollywood Reporter caught up with the producers of the Oscars, Raj Kapoor and Katie Milan. Katie told the Hollywood Reporter, "We've been preparing for the show for months and months and months, and then what happened in January caused us to do a rethink of a lot of the elements and really think, okay, how do we acknowledge it, the fires? How do we reflect on it? And also, how do we give the people the ability to work so hard and have so much talent to be able to walk on that stage and still seize their moments?" So yeah, it's been an interesting and difficult couple of months, and we just really hope this year's show kind of helps heal and is a bit of a love letter to L.A. Kapoor also was a producer on this year's Grammys. The Grammys were acclaimed for the way they handled L.A. Kapoor said, "It's definitely influenced our show. We have moments that definitely acknowledge the fires, what has happened. It's kind of our unique spin on how we acknowledge that, but there will be at least 3 moments within the show that touch on it and hopefully have some messaging that may be inspiring. Then, a charitable component with the Motion Picture Academy and the charities they're supporting. And then there's the way that Conan will acknowledge it. So throughout the evening, there's going to be some touchstones to acknowledge because so many people in the room, so many people in the film industry have been impacted by it. And I think almost everybody in LA knows somebody who's experienced some sort of loss or impact. So we feel that it's very prudent that we acknowledge it and make it part of our show. But we also have the Oscars to produce. We have 23 awards to give out. And we want to really honor everybody who's nominated and have the unique things that make the Oscars the Oscars." Milan talked about what Conan's up to and said, "There's a lot of ideas, and he has a great team of people who have been cooking them up for weeks and weeks and weeks. What we have at the moment is probably way too many, but we love that because then we can whittle it down to the best of the best for the show. Some of them are pre-taped. A lot of them are live in the room. I think Conan is just so beloved, and he has such great connections with pretty much everybody who's going to be in that audience. So seeing that from the stage and allowing him to kind of really own the room and give everybody license in the room to have a good time, it's crucial and key. But what we love about Conan and his style is that he always comes up with something unexpected, and we're going to pepper that throughout the show. So yes, there will be some pre-tapes. There's definitely going to be some unexpected moments, and there are probably some surprises we haven't even thought of yet because it's a constantly evolving creative process at the moment." Oscar writer Bruce Valanche talked to the Hollywood Reporter about some of what goes on in making one of these things. They asked the question kind of similar to what Trevor Noah talked about that I played the clip the other day. Do you play to the room or do you play the people at home? Bruce said, "You make it work for the house," meaning the people in the room, because if the house is enjoying it, that spirit is seen by people at home watching it, and they kind of get into the fact that it's working. And even though they might not know every reference that's being made, there'll be enough. You have to calibrate. His advice for any Oscar night host: "I always tell hosts to front load the show because for everybody who wins, there are 4 people who don't. And as the evening wears on, the room fills up with losers and they're not listening to you. They're texting, firing their agent, firing their dentist, whoever. So you're not going to get the laughs you got." And many times the camera will cut to where Eddie Murphy was sitting, and now it's a lady who bought a dress from TJ Maxx that she got for the occasion. You better do the strong stuff up front because you're not going to build as the show goes on. All right, Bruce, what makes a great Oscar host? And guys, I don't pre-read these things half the time. I didn't set this up. I'm laughing. Let me answer. Bruce said, "Well, what Joe Coy proved at the Golden Globes is you have to be a big star." I'm not going to do it, Scott Becker. Relax. Because if you're going to make fun of big stars, they have to feel as if you're on their level. There's a very short list of people who can do that. Generally, no one wants to do it. Bruce, is there an upside of hosting an award show? Hey, if you're Nikki Glaser, there's a great upside. And she wasn't mean. She calibrated her stuff. Her act is very dirty, and she was being a nice girl, but she had a little edge to it. I don't know if it would have worked on the Oscars necessarily, because while it's the same crowd, there's more pomp and ceremony to this thing. Listen to this question. Who was the worst Oscar host that you had to work with? Bruce Valanche said, "Well, I had a problem with Ellen, but that's because I think she was scared." Hollywood Reporter: "Seems you weren't the only one to have had a hard time working with Ellen." Bruce said, "Yeah, I had no idea. She isolated herself a lot. It was not fun, and I like her. I've known her for years. And she was always fun, but I think the burden of everything that happened to her changed her. I think she was a little risk-averse, even though she was now on her own talk show and everything about her was out and the public loved her. I think she was very protective and wanted her people around her, and that was it. So that was the only one that was really difficult." Bruce, are people ever warned that they're going to be made fun of? He said no. Elizabeth Taylor was the rare exception. It was because it was a joke about her personal life. Billy Crystal was introducing Al Pacino, and he said, this is Al Pacino's 8th nomination, and he's never won. He said more people cry out another man's name than anybody except Larry Fortensky, that was Elizabeth Taylor's 7th husband. And longtime Oscar telecast director Gil Cates says, it's hysterical. You have to call Elizabeth because it's a sex joke about her. Anyway, he called her and told her the joke, and she said, who's Larry? That's great. They're really nothing comedy specific other than the whole Conan of it all. In case you're curious, you're in an Oscars mood. If you're still listening to me 20 minutes in, the nominees for Best Picture are Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. The only one of those I've seen is Dune Part 2, and I didn't think it was that good. So don't ask me what the Best Picture is. And as I record this late on Thursday afternoon, I'm now realizing they're probably scrambling to put together something for the great Gene Hackman. That is a quite developing news story as I record on Thursday afternoon. Perhaps by the time you're hearing this on Saturday, the story has changed one way or another, or we have some more information. So I don't mean to offend. It's Thursday, 3:16 p.m. Eastern. Johnny Mac talking to you now. But my point here is, yeah, I bet there'll be a big Gene Hackman segment on Sunday. So tomorrow's a normal episode. Monday morning, I'll talk about the Oscars and also about Shane Gillis hosting Saturday Night Live tonight. And I'm going to go bug Mike Chisholm from the Letterman podcast and see if I can get him to talk Conan with me on Monday. So you might get a bonus episode Monday as well. We'll see. All right. See you tomorrow.